The Atlanta Dream didn't just lose, they got dismantled, out-hustled, out-coached, outclassed. And at the center of it all wasn't a seasoned veteran or a WNBA MVP, it was a rookie. Caitlin Clark didn't drop 30. She didn't hit a flurry of logo threes. In fact, on paper, it was one of her quieter nights. Just 12 points and 9 assists. But if you watched even a minute of that second half, you know the truth. This wasn't about numbers. This was about power, command, control. Because what Caitlin Clark did to the Atlanta Dream wasn't just impressive, it was surgical. She took their best scorer and made her disappear. She dismantled their front court without even needing to score on them. She controlled the pace, elevated her teammates, and turned a struggling Indiana Fever team into a machine. This wasn't just a bounce-back performance. It was a warning shot, and the league should be paying attention. To understand how dominant Caitlin Clark was, you have to rewind to the chaos of the first half. Jordan Canada came into this game playing like she had something to prove, and for the first 20 minutes, she was on fire. She racked up 26 points before halftime, draining threes like Steph, slicing through the defense, and making Indiana's backcourt look completely overmatched. Add to that Atlanta's overwhelming size advantage with Brittney Griner and Brianna Jones, and it looked like the Fever were headed for another frustrating one-sided loss. Caitlin Clark? She was quiet. Her shot wasn't falling. The pace felt disjointed. And with every Dream bucket, the critics got a little louder. Where's the dominance? Is she still in a slump? Why is she even on the floor? But that's the thing with Clark. She doesn't need to start hot. She just needs the right moment to flip the switch. And when it came, everything changed. Jordan Canada went from unstoppable to invisible. And Caitlin Clark was the reason why. After Canada's explosive first half, something had to change. So Caitlin took matters into her own hands. She didn't wait for a coaching adjustment. She didn't rely on help defense. She locked in, face guarding, chasing over screens, staying low, using her wingspan, and refusing to give up a single inch of space. This wasn't some lazy switch or passive containment. This was Clark taking the defensive assignment personally. And the result? Canada, who torched the Fever for 26 points in the first half, scored just 4 of the rest of the game. Let that sink in. That kind of defensive shift doesn't happen by accident. Clark disrupted rhythm. She killed confidence. And when Canada went quiet, the Dream's entire offense started to sputter. But Caitlin's defense didn't just stop with one player. It set the tone for everyone. Once Caitlin Clark set the defensive tone, the rest of the Fever followed. And it was like watching a different team take the court. In the first half, Indiana looked scattered and reactive. In the second, they were flying around with purpose. The Fever allowed just 23 points in the third quarter and 30 in the fourth. That's not just improved defense, that's a full-blown transformation. Caitlin was the engine behind it all. She pressured the ball. She communicated on every switch. She refused to let the Dream find any rhythm. Suddenly, players like Brittney Griner and Brianna Jones, Atlanta's towering front court, became irrelevant. They weren't getting clean looks. They weren't dominating the paint. They weren't even touching the ball in scoring positions. Clark's energy became contagious. Defensive rotations tightened. Closeouts got sharper. Hands stayed active. And a team that looked lost in the first half turned into a defensive unit that couldn't be cracked. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud, but it was deadly effective. And Caitlin was at the center of every possession. While Clark's defense was lighting the fire, her offense was pouring gas on it. She didn't force shots, she didn't chase stats. She ran the game like a floor general who had complete control over the battlefield. Every possession had a purpose, every pass felt intentional, and the Dream couldn't keep up. 12 points and 9 assists only tell half the story. What the box score doesn't show is how many of Caitlin's passes led directly to free throws. At least 3 of her dimes to Aaliyah Boston resulted in trips to the line. That means more points, more fouls on Atlanta's bigs, and even more control of the pace. She hit Sophie Cunningham in stride, 4 separate times for wide-open threes. Cunningham finished with a 16-point, 10-rebound double-double, and it wasn't a coincidence. When Clark had the ball, the offense expanded. Spacing opened up. Defenders were forced to stretch out, and that created opportunities that few guards in the league are capable of generating. Caitlin didn't just run the show, she rewrote the script, and everyone around her benefited. Here's the wild part. Caitlin Clark didn't even have to go at Atlanta's stars directly to destroy them. She made them irrelevant without touching the stat sheet. Take Brittney Griner, a 6'9" Olympian, a former face of the league, a player who should have feasted against a smaller Fever lineup. Instead, she vanished. Not because Caitlin posted her up or drove into her chest. No, Clark did it with tempo, with spacing, with precision. Every time she pushed the ball in transition, Griner was still jogging back, trying to find her footing while Indiana was already scoring. When Griner dropped to protect the paint, Clark punished her with skip passes to open shooters. Dantas, Cunningham, Boston. Threes rained down. The floor stretched, and Griner looked lost. She was forced into awkward closeouts, indecisive switches, and slow rotations. She never found rhythm, and she wasn't alone. Brianna Jones got cooked too. She spent the second half in constant recovery mode, late to rotations, frustrated, and eventually fouled out. The Dream's front court, which was supposed to dominate, completely melted under Clark's pressure. And all of it happened without Caitlin scoring on them once. That's control, that's impact. That's domination without ego. Caitlin Clark shot just 5 for 17 from the field, 1 for 7 from deep. For most players, that kind of night would kill momentum, drain confidence, and shrink their presence on the court. But not Caitlin. She never stopped attacking, never stopped orchestrating. She didn't let a cold shooting night pull her out of the game. She used it as fuel to impact the game in other ways. That's rare, especially for a rookie. When Atlanta collapsed the paint, Clark adjusted. She didn't force contested jumpers. She used her body, absorbed contact, kicked it out to open shooters. She ran pick and rolls with Aaliyah Boston that felt straight out of the NBA. Clean pocket passes, perfect timing, easy buckets. Even when the coaching staff tried to shift her off the ball, a move that's been criticized all season, she adapted. She cut hard, she spaced wide. And when the ball found her again, she immediately initiated offense. The game never got away from her. She dictated the flow, even without the scoring. And that's what separates her from every other young player in the league. While most need their shot to fall to stay engaged, Caitlin only needs one thing: the ball. Look at the scoreboard. 99 points for Indiana. In a league where even 80 is considered a high total, that's a statement. But this wasn't some once-in-a-season offensive outburst. This was the Caitlin Clark system in full swing. And it worked. She didn't need to be the leading scorer. She didn't need a triple-double. She just needed to be trusted. When Clark had the ball in her hands, the Fever looked alive, the offense flowed, the spacing made sense, teammates moved with purpose, and everyone got easier looks. Sophie Cunningham knocked down threes. Dantas spread the floor. Aaliyah Boston dominated inside. Kelsey Mitchell got hot. The whole team thrived, and they all knew why. Even the players said it out loud: we need to play like Caitlin. This wasn't a coincidence. This was chemistry created by movement, vision, and leadership. It's what happens when you put your best playmaker in charge and let her do what she does best: manipulate the defense, set up teammates, and make everyone around her better. That's the Caitlin effect, and it's changing everything. For months now, the conversation around Caitlin Clark has been obsessed with one thing: her scoring. Why isn't she dropping 30? Where's the logo threes? Is she struggling in the pros? But this game flipped that narrative upside down. Because against Atlanta, Clark showed us something far more dangerous than a scoring barrage. She showed us control, tactical, emotional, and psychological control. And she did it against one of the most experienced, physically imposing teams in the league. Jordan Canada locked up. 26 points in the first half, 4 in the second. That alone would have made headlines. Brittney Griner virtually erased. No highlight blocks, no offensive dominance, just a ghost of the force she's supposed to be. Brianna Jones neutralized and fouled out. That's 3 WNBA veterans, all overwhelmed, frustrated, and eventually outplayed. And the person who orchestrated their collapse wasn't a 10-year vet or an MVP. It was a rookie who's still battling injuries, who hasn't found her three-point stroke, who's being doubted daily by the media and even her own coaching staff. But Caitlin Clark doesn't care about any of that. She cares about winning. She cares about impact. And this game, it was loaded with both. Even when she was shifted off ball, a decision that's drawn non-stop criticism, she found ways to make it work. Her gravity forced defenders to follow her across the floor. Her movement bent the defense, created space, and set up actions even when she wasn't touching the ball. That's IQ, that's leadership. And that's what separates her from every other rookie in the league. She's not just adjusting to the WNBA, she's shaping it. Because when a rookie can dictate tempo, eliminate stars, and elevate an entire roster, that's not just a player, that's a system. For the first half of the season, Indiana looked like a team stuck between two worlds. On one side, you had veteran leadership and a coach trying to run a traditional system. On the other, you had a generational talent, Caitlin Clark, who doesn't fit neatly into old frameworks. The result? Awkward rotations, confused spacing, a team unsure of its own identity. But against Atlanta, the picture snapped into focus. Clark was the constant, the organizer, the creator, the energy source. Every time she touched the ball, something good happened. The tempo rose, the floor opened. Players moved with purpose. Confidence surged. And here's the thing, It didn't matter that she was shooting poorly. Her influence went beyond stats. She broke Atlanta's traps with skip passes and cross-court lasers. She split double teams with a single dribble and forced defenders into scramble mode. She orchestrated two-man actions that looked like they were ripped straight from an NBA playbook. Clark and Boston running pick and rolls with clinical timing. And it wasn't just the mechanics, it was the leadership. When the Dream tried to throw bodies at her, Griner doubling, guards rotating early, Clark didn't flinch. She trusted her teammates. She kept making the extra pass. She kept running the floor. And she kept the team steady. That's what great players do. They don't just lead when things are easy. They take over when the game is teetering on the edge. In the second half, Indiana didn't just survive. They dominated. And at the heart of it all, Clark calmly pulling every string. Let's not sugarcoat this. The Atlanta Dream came into this game with more size, more experience, and more momentum. They had just seen Clark struggle in previous games. They had a blueprint, a size advantage, and one of the hottest scorers in the league. And they still got demolished. Indiana scored 59 points in the second half, nearly unheard of in the WNBA. They won by 17, and the final minutes weren't competitive, they were humiliating. Not because Clark scored 40, but because she didn't have to. She bent the game without blowing it up. And that might be the most terrifying thing for the rest of the league, because Clark is still recovering. Her groin injury is still healing. Her quad still limits her explosiveness. Her shot isn't falling. And yet, she's outclassing elite defenders, neutralizing all-stars, and making entire rosters look outdated. What happens when she's healthy? When her three-point shot returns? When the coaching staff finally stops tinkering and just lets her run the show? What happens then? The answer's obvious, and it's already starting. Clark doesn't need to be the league's top scorer to be its most dangerous player. She controls games. She reshapes defenses. She elevates teams. And if Indiana lets her fully take the reins, everyone else should be very, very nervous. This was never just about a box score. It was never about a single win. This was a shift in energy, an announcement to the entire WNBA. Caitlin Clark isn't just the face of the Fever. She's the system that makes them dangerous, the reason the offense hums, the spark behind defensive intensity, the leader who turns breakdowns into blowouts. She locked down Jordan Canada. She dismantled Atlanta's front. She pushed the pace, read the floor, made the right play every single possession, even when her own shot wasn't falling. So here's the truth. This wasn't a comeback game. This was a declaration. Let her run the offense. Let her lead. Let her take over. Because when Caitlin Clark is free to be Caitlin Clark, the Fever become unstoppable. And if you believe it's time to hand her the keys for good, drop for Caitlin in the comments. This isn't hype. This is just the beginning.